Welcome back everyone to another Geometry Dash 2.2 tutorial. In this video what we're gonna learn is how to make double jump, and this is something that a lot of people have asked me about, and here I am. We're gonna teach you exactly how that works. So this one is gonna be for a platformer, so you're gonna have to go into platformer, and again my tutorials are all super duper beginner friendly, so don't worry, you'll be able to pull this off at the end. So look at this. So what we want to do is we want you to simply be able to click one more time in the air in order to jump on top of this thing. And there are many different ways of how you can do this. However, I'm going to show you one of the most optimal ways to pull this off, and it uses this secret that you have to have a hidden jump orb like this one. So you want to put a yellow jump orb right there, and this is pretty much exactly what we want. We want to jump and then be able to jump again. However, we want to be able to do that pretty much everywhere and not just here. So to do that, we want to make this thing always follow the player, and to do that it is very simple. You just select the thing and then click on edit group and then go to next free and then just assign it to the next free group ID that shows to you. To me it is 1 because it's a brand new level, so there aren't any used group IDs, so we just use the group ID of 1. Now we want to use our first trigger. We want to go to this guy, and then over here we're going to see advanced follow. And if you guys want to have this massive menu like that, you want to go to here, there, and then just make these guys at max, and that should be a lot better to get used at the editor. This way it's a lot cleaner. So we want to use one of the most complicated triggers, but we're literally just going to use it for like 2 things, and that's it. So you want to place it, and then you want to go to edit object while having the trigger selected, of course, and then you want to input here the ID that you have put for the orb. In this case it was 1, and then we want to just tick P1. So we want 1 to always follow P1. And now if we start, you guys are gonna see that the orb is always with the player, which is perfect. Really nice. However, you're gonna see an issue. You can do double jumps. However, you can not only do double jumps but pretty much infinite jumps, which is not what we want. So we want to make some logic to basically define when you should be able to do the second jump, and that's actually quite simple. So by default we want you to not be able to use this orb, and by the way I'm just gonna make this a bit smaller just so that we can see a bit more stuff. You don't have to, but it's pretty much the same now. I just want to make sure that we actually like see the icon as well. So by default we want to toggle this off, and to do that it's very simple. We just want to use this toggle trigger and then edit group, and then we want to input the group that the orb has. In this case it's going to be 1, and now you guys are going to see that the orb has disappeared, and what this toggle trigger does is pretty much toggle that orb off, so it disables it. So it's there, but you know, it's just disabled, so you can't see it or interact with it. Okay, so now when do we want to show this orb? Because of course we don't want it to always be enabled, but we want to define when it should be on and off, and to do that we're just simply going to use the new trigger called the event trigger. And by just placing this in here, you want to make sure that, okay, so what do we want to do? We want this orb to get enabled as soon as we jump. So if I jump, it should be enabled, and to do that it's extremely simple. You just have to go to the event trigger and click on edit object, sorry, and then you want to click on this upright button. It's very simple, and then you want to select what you want to do. So what we want to do is every time you jump we want to trigger something. That's what the event trigger is. It basically allows you to trigger certain triggers based on what the player does, and you can pretty much define here what you want. And as you guys can see, there are a lot of options in here, so you want to make sure that you have selected all the options that will enable our jump orb, which in this case is also going to be the yellow pad, the pink pad, and also the red pad. Because listen, so if you jump on top of this, we want the orb to be enabled again so that you can do the double jump, right? And also if you do the normal jump, which in our case is this one. So if any of these two happen, we want to enable our orb, and to do that we're actually almost done. So you just have to add another toggle trigger and edit object, give it that group ID of the orb, and then make sure it's on spawn triggered and also multi-trigger. What this means is this is not any ordinary trigger anymore, but it can only be triggered using different triggers. So sounds complicated, but you want to give that trigger a new group ID by going to edit group and then next free. In my case, it's 2. And then what you want to do is click on the event, click on edit object, and then select here 2. Very, very simple. So what this means is that every time you jump or you do any of these things, we're simply going to spawn group ID 2. And this one is group ID 2. So this one is going to toggle this orb off. However, we want to make it toggle it on. So to do that, you simply want to select the toggle trigger, edit group, and activate group. This way, it's gonna not disable it, but rather enable it, which is perfect, exactly what we want. And another thing I just noticed is that you guys see that every time I click an object, there's this extra info in here, which is really, really helpful. So instead of checking what this object here has of a group ID, instead of doing this and seeing 2 here, you can actually see it in here. It says G and then 2. So to enable that, simply just click on there and then show object info. Very, very useful. So you no longer have to like click here and check it. You can simply just check things from the outside, which is very, very helpful. Now that that is out of the way, we can simply click and play and see if it's going to work. So every time I jump, it enables the thing, which is perfect. And every time I touch these guys, it enables it. So if I can do perfect. Double jump works awesome. However, now the thing is forever enabled, which is not what we want. So we have defined when we want to enable it. However, now we simply have to define when we want to disable it. And that one is also not that hard if you just think about it. I mean, if we jump, it's enabled, and then every time we land, we want to disable it again so that this whole cycle is then basically done. So to do that, we simply want to add another event trigger, very simple. And this time we want to go to edit group, edit object, I keep mixing that, and then going up there and selecting all of the landings, because every time we land, as we said, if it's a tiny landing, you know, feather landing, soft, normal, or hard landing, it still is a landing, so we want to count that. And that's pretty much it. You just have to enable all of these guys, and then you want to add another toggle trigger. So if you guys know how this specific step works and you guys are on it, so we just want to add another toggle trigger. We want to give it the object ID over here, group ID of 1. Then you want to make it spawn and multi-trigger. Multi just means that it can be triggered multiple times. And then we want to give it a group ID, a next free group ID, which in my case is 3. And then you want to select the event trigger and just put 3 over there. And now we have defined when we want to disable and when we want to enable the orb. So now you guys can see that if I jump, it's going to get enabled, and if I land, it's going to get disabled. Perfect, exactly what we want. So now you guys can see that every time I land, it's just going to disable it. However, this is perfect for like going up and then landing on something. However, you don't have to land. You can still do infinite jumps in a specific case. So we want to now jump into the a bit more complicated logic, which I think once you have done it, you're going to completely understand what's going on, and it's going to be super duper easy. Let's firstly define the problem. So the problem is that this orb is always active unless I basically land on something. So we want to have something else that also disables this jump orb. And if you think about it, that's pretty much the jump orb itself, really. Like every time I click the jump orb, this is when I want it to be disabled, right? So that I can no longer do the third jump, right? So you want to do this and then instantly disable it so that you can no longer do the third jump. So to do that, it's actually quite simple, but we want to use a new trigger, and we want to use this one, and you can place it down. And what you want to do is click F3 on your keyboard. This is a cheat code, F3, or if you're on mobile, don't worry, you can do that too. Click on this and then preview mode, just disable it, and then you're gonna start seeing the disabled object, which is perfect. Now we can see the orb. So you want to add this one and then give it the exact same group ID as the orb itself. So we want to go here and give this one a group ID of 1, and I would say let's also scale it to the same size, so 0.7, the same as this one. And now what this thing does is, just like when you click this one, you do a small jump. This one, when you click, you can define what you want to do. So we want to trigger a trigger using in here. So you guys remember how we added here a bunch of, a toggle off and toggle on for the orb? So we said every time we click this orb, we want to disable the orb itself. So every time you click it, we want to trigger this one that disables it, which you guys can see over here is a group ID on 3 or in here. So we want to go on there and select 3, and we want to do spawn only to make sure it spawns that trigger, because this is spawn enabled, of course. And these guys, by the way, they don't have to be on top of each other, and they also don't have to be in here. You can pretty much like place them in there, because as soon as the level starts, every object that has the group ID of 1 is simply gonna start like instantly follow the player, exact position of the player, like that. So you don't have to worry to having them like placed inside your level. You can simply just place them like outside. They're gonna come inside anyway. All right, so perfect. Now if we give it a test, you guys can see that every time I click this orb, it's going to disable itself, and that is fantastic, phenomenal. We are almost done. Now every time I jump, it's get enable, and every time I click it, it's going to be disabled, and every time I land, it's going to get disabled. Very, very awesome. Looks very, very clean. However, there is one small issue. Let's say that your level, you were making like a demon level, and you decided, you know what, I'm gonna go super duper hardcore mode on my players, the guys that are gonna play my levels. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a super duper hard double jump, and I'm gonna see if people are gonna be able to pull it off. And so what I want the player to do is basically just fall in here like that, and then do the jump in here. I think that's actually a bit too hard, so I'm just gonna do that. And we're also gonna add a soul blade up there just to make it a bit more harder. And now you guys can see that we want to fall and then jump. However, the jump orb doesn't get enabled if I'm falling, and we haven't defined the orb to get enabled if we fall. We only said if I jump or if I touch this pad. So what I have to do is kind of like do this awkward jump and kind of like fall in there, which I purposefully placed this saw blade there because I want you to be able to fall and then jump. So we want to have a bit more logic in order to define one more thing where the orb is going to be enabled. So very simple. We want to add another event trigger, and you're gonna see why we're adding a new event trigger instead of just modifying this one. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna select the new event trigger, click on edit object, and then this one, and then we want to select fall speed low, fall speed medium, and fall speed high. This is something that I figured out pretty recently, honestly. Now the fact that 2.2 has been out for so long, I think it's quite crazy. So what this means is that every time your falling speed is low, medium, or high, and what this means is that if I fall from here, like instantly my falling speed is low, so that would be triggered, and then it gets to high, and then whatever. So cool. So now what we want to do is so every time that happens, we want to enable our orb using this one. So this one has the group ID of 2, so we want to select the event trigger and simply place 2 in here. So every time I have a falling speed of low, medium, or high, we're going to enable the same trigger that enables the jump orb that allows us to double jump. So now you guys will see that if we jump on there and we fall, it's instantly going to be enabled. That's perfect. However, now we have created a new problem, because we said every time we fall, we want to have this enabled. So technically, when you jump and start falling, that actually counts as enabling the orb again. So yeah, now we can do infinite jumps, because you guys can see that I'm jumping and then I'm having this, fall speed that's either medium, high, or whatever. So to fix that, it's actually a bit more complicated, but once you do it, it just works perfectly, and it's honestly 100% worth the time putting in instead of having to, do infinite jumps. So what you want to do is add a stop trigger, and then you want to give this event trigger that we added a new group ID. In my case, it's going to be 4. And now what we want to do is we want to instantly, that's bad. Okay, we want to give the event trigger the new group ID of 4, and in here we want to assign it using edit object. In here we want to put 4, so that this one shows 4, and if you select that one shows 4. So what we want to do is we want to instantly, as soon as you start the level, we want to stop this event trigger. And what this means is that it's no longer going to check these guys, right? So it's going to be disabled basically. So we want to stop stop it. We want to pause it because we're gonna have to enable it again later. So now we have pretty much just paused this trigger, and we're just back to our normal state where if we have this falling speed, it's basically no longer gonna enable our orb, which is yeah, for now what we want. So now we want to resume it. But when do we want to resume it? Well, very simple. We said up there that every time we land, we're gonna disable the orb, and that's actually when we want to enable or resume our newly added event trigger. So we want to select, so we want to put the new pause trigger right there. I just copied and pasted that, and we want to make it resume instead using edit object and then over here, and we want to make it spawn triggered and also multi-trigger. And now we want to give it the same group ID as this one, and I'm going to show you a quick cheat code that you can use as well. It's like a hack, you can say. So instead of looking over here 3 and then assign it in here 3, what you can do is simply select the trigger that you want to copy and then click on copy values and then select the other one and then paste values. And as you guys can see, it has assigned the 3 to it, which is perfect because sometimes you have an object that has quite a few group IDs and then you don't want to assign each one. So you can just do that and then paste state, which is perfect. So now every time we land, we want to disable the orb and we want to resume this guy, which basically handles the falling, which now you guys are going to see. So every time I do that, now it's resumed. So if I fall, yes, indeed, it's showing this guy again. However, now we have resumed it, so we have to, you know, pause it again at some point. Otherwise, it wouldn't really make that much sense. So we want to copy and paste this one, move it down, copy the values from this toggle trigger, and then paste them over there. And then we want to make this one the pause. So we have just said that every time we jump or do these guys, we want to pause our event trigger. However, now there's the issue that every time we click the orb, because we said, you guys remember, we defined this one, this new thing over here, and we said that we wanted to enable 3, which is then going to trigger these 2. Now we have added a new trigger to this, which is not what we want, because now you can still do infinite jumps. So if you do this, you guys can see that we are still falling because we're clicking the orb and it's enabling this one basically. So what we want to do is separate it. So we want to copy and paste this one and give it a brand new group ID. I'm just going to give it the group ID of 8. And now what you guys want to do is select this one right there and edit object, and you want to give it 8 instead of 3. So instead of triggering both, we want to only basically disable the orb. And now if you guys play test, you guys are going to see that you are not able to do the infinite jumps. However, if you fall, it's instantly gonna okay, I'm so bad, but it does work. It does work. I am not bad at the editor, but when it comes to the game, I kind of have a wait, how did I not die to that? Okay, that was crazy. All right, now the final thing, we want to spice this up even more. As always, I like to spice my tutorials up at the end. We want to add some particles, and that's gonna be very cool and very easy to do, and adds a lot of character into your level. So firstly, what we want to do is we want to add a new particle, and you can do that in going there and then this one, and then you know, adding it pretty much anywhere you want, but make sure it's like not visible in the game while you're playing. Just put it like behind or something. So now you want to click on edit special, and you're gonna see a massive menu. This looks very scary, but don't worry, we're not gonna mess around too much with all of these guys. I have a full tutorial on how to use this thing, but we're not gonna get into that yet. So one thing you guys might have seen, I have this particle thing, and you can enable it and disable it using F4 on your keyboard. However, if you are on phone, it's a bit hard. You want to go there, settings, and then go to hide particle icons, which is very useful because sometimes you have like a very big particle, and if you have disabled it, you can't really know where to select it. So you click F4, and then you see that's where the actual particle object is. All right, so cool. Now we want to select this one, and we're actually just going to build a quick particle, which is not going to be that hard. So we want to increase the speed by a lot, and we also want to make the gravity kind of fall down. We want to change the angle a bit so that it feels like that, and we want to click on max, and then we want to make the duration at 0 so that they kind of get spawned like that. But you guys can see that all of them pretty much have the same speed, so we want to add a bit of variation to the speed, and like that looks cool. However, we want to have a lot less particles, and we also want them to live less, so we don't want them to last too long. And this looks like a pretty cool animation to play every time you do the double jump. So now you guys can see that some of the particles are just disappearing instantly, which isn't really that smooth. So going to extra and then adding a bit of fade out is actually just going to make it a lot smoother. You can decide what value you want. I think 0.1 should be good. 0.1 like that. Yeah. However, they kind of live a bit too much. So I'm just going to do this maybe. Yeah. Looks cool. And I'm also going to change this size variation so that kind of looks like that. And maybe a bit more, you know, a bit less, what is it called? The gravity, a bit less angle variation. And that sounds about good. So now, yeah, you have set up your particle. You want to give it a new group ID, which in my case is going to be 9. And then we're going to be using one of the most powerful triggers, in my opinion, in GD, which is the spawn particle. This literally allows you to spawn an object, which is the first ever object in GD to ever allow us to do that. Hopefully in the future we're going to get more of this stuff, but we're going to see. So this one basically just spawns a particle at the position that you select. So in our case, we want to spawn this particle at the player. So you want to select this one, seeing that it's 9, and then select the spawn particle, edit object 9. And if you guys know what we're going to put here, you guys are really on it. You want to put 1. Why? Because we have selected these guys to be 1, and these guys are always on the player, if you guys remember. So spawning the particle at 1 is basically just spawning it at the player, because these guys have the same position as the player always. Nice. Now we have selected our spawn particles. You don't really have to mess around with any of these settings yet, but what we're going to do is we want to make sure that we're going to spawn this every time you do the double jump. And to do that, we just want to put it in here, and we want to select that one because this one gets triggered by this one. This one has 8, so every time we click it, we want to spawn this one and also that one. And if you guys remember, copy values and paste values, this gives it the same group ID, edit object, and then we want to make it spawn and multi-trigger, and that should do the job, I believe. Yes, indeed. Look at it. Look at how beautiful this is. Every time we do a jump, it's just going to spawn these particles, which is really cool. Now what you can do is go to that spawn particle trigger and then edit object and then add a bit of offset if you want to. Maybe you want to move the particle a bit down, because if this is the player, right, and this is where the group ID 0 is, actually I'm going to use a cross. This is where the group ID of 1 is, so we don't want to spawn the particle there, but rather a bit more down like that, right, because this is where you jump from. And now that I think about it, I think -5 is enough. We don't need -10, because I think -10 is like an entire grid block. We just want a half. Yeah, exactly. Phenomenal looking, fantastic. Now the very final step is to, of course, hide these triggers permanently, and to do that is very simple. Edit group, extra, hide, while having these two, of course, selected like that. And now you guys can see that they are still visible. And why? That's because if you guys go on there and you can see hide invisible is disabled. If you enable this one, it's going to make the things that we hid actually invisible. So this is just for debugging. Click F6 if you want to on your PC, and it should basically show them or disable them. But this doesn't really play a role in the official game. And I think that's it. I'm just gonna do like a small level quickly, and then we're just gonna get right into it. So we're just gonna make like a cool like double jumps that you would never be able to do as a normal player, but now you guys have learned how to do double jump. And I think this is probably one of the best ways to do the double jump. Why? Because it just works with pretty much everything, and even if we like add like, I don't know, this one or something, we can still do the double jump off of it. So if you feel like you do something where you should be able to do the double jump but it's not working, what you can do is simply just add that event onto this one. So we decided that every time we like hit a yellow pad, a pink pad, or a red pad, we want to be able to do the double jump. So if you decide every time I don't know, do like the, where is it, the portal flip or unflip or gravity portal, every time I do that, I want to be able to do the double jump. You can just select that and that should work perfectly. So awesome. That's very, very cool. So now let's just give this a play test. Actually, that's a bit too easy because we can do double jumps today. We're going full crazy mode. So let's just give it a try. Let's see what we have crafted. Boom, our level is ready. And yeah, everything looks pretty cool. And by the way, one thing, you might have this annoying effect with the orb. So if you do, just select the orb, edit group, extra, and then no effects and no particles. This way it just doesn't have that weird effect around it. That's very easy to set up, and now you should never never be able to see the thing again, but you can do an awesome double jump, which just is phenomenal. And even if you jump on top of this guy, you can do, and if you fall, you can still do it, which is just really, really, really cool. Now let's do a bit of challenge in here. Yeah, we want to fall and then jump. I'm so bad. I am actually not that good. Okay, I'm getting cooked by my own level. That's not that very cool. Okay, let's actually give it one more try, and if I don't manage to do it, then I'm going to restart until I do. Until you guys subscribe and like this video, I am going to do it. Let's go. We did it. So I'm actually going to upload double jump. I'm going to upload this level, and meanwhile, you guys can slap that subscribe button on this video and also like it and comment. Let me know what you guys want next. And feel free to completely steal this level if you want to. If you want to, you can just steal. We have to verify it. Okay, we have to actually add an end trigger now. That's not that very cool. But yeah, I have a playlist where I teach you guys how to make a full, beautiful, like decorated level with block design and everything. So if you want to check that out, make sure to do so. And I also have a editing plugin for Premiere Pro that allows you to edit really fast. So if you want to buy that, you can do that as well. Level verified and upload. Double jump, there it is. Here's the ID 1153198336. So yeah, make sure to slap that like and also subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next tutorial.